This is the 9th video in a series of about 23 to 25 lessons that is designed to help you give useful information to the Jehovah's Witnesses so that they can make an informed decision about their own religious beliefs. This is intended to do for the Jehovah's Witnesses what you would want done for you if you were a witness. In this series you'll be studying with the Jehovah's Witnesses in their favorite publication, this book, What Does the Bible Really Teach? You'll be reading each paragraph and giving the answers that are in the paragraph, but putting those answers in your own words. You do not need to agree with this book. You're only going to repeat and give back what you see written in the book and in those paragraphs. Now, I will give you some background information and things to say and suggestions of what questions to ask. Now, I do not discuss this entire book in this video series. I only discuss those issues that are outside of the evangelical mainstream community. So as you read it, you may find things in this book that I don't discuss, things that you don't agree with. You don't need to agree with those things when you encounter them in the book, as you study with the witness. But I also ask that you don't make the witness feel uncomfortable when you come across those points. What you can say, though, is that you need to think about it. You're not sure that you agree, but you do know that within the mainstream evangelical community, there are persons who happen to say similar things. You need to let the witness know that their views in these other areas that I don't discuss in this video series, that these other views are tolerated within the evangelical Christian community. The issue that we're going to discuss in this video is, on page 58, what really happens at death. That's the subject. Page 58, and we're going to be looking at paragraphs 4 through 6. I don't have time to read all that, but as you have that book and you read through it, you'll find out that in the latter part of paragraph 4, something that is outside of the evangelical community. But the question on paragraph 4 is, what basic idea do many religions share concerning death? And that's just asking, what do the churches and religions that you know believe? And you can just repeat the answer that's in the paragraph, knowing that what follows on is material that's outside of the evangelical community. In paragraphs 5 and 6, and as you read it, you'll see that the Watchtower's position that at death, you as a person and everything about you ceases to exist. There is no soul that exists after death. There is no spirit. There's nothing personal that's spiritual that exists after death. You're gone, evaporated. That whatever makes up you is gone. And that's what their explanation is that it's like a flame that you blow out, or electricity to the light, and you turn off the electricity. Where'd the light go? It's gone. Okay? So you're going to, when you get to this point, you're going to finish reading, or someone's going to be reading, you or the witness is going to be reading paragraphs 5 and 6. And then when you finish and it comes to your turn to comment, the question is, what does the Bible teach about the condition of the dead? Well, there's one thing that the paragraph says, but then there's something else that the community that you're from says. So this is what you could say. In preparation, though, for your study first, before you have your study, in the margins, maybe at the bottom of the page, or the margin here, you're going to write 4 scriptures. First one is Ecclesiastes 9, 2 through 10. Matthew 14, verse 26. Hebrews 12, 22 and 23. And Revelation 6, 9 and 10. And that you're going to have in the margin. And just remember those verses. And it's best in that order, although that's not critical. When you finish, again, someone reading paragraph 6, then you're going to say something like this. I know you recommend that I should ask questions and I should seek to know the truth about the Bible. And I do want to know the truth. And as we're covering this subject of what really happens at death, I do have a question. Because in my community, I've heard something different. And I'm going to need your help. There's four verses that I'm having trouble, four Bible verses that I'm having trouble fitting into this material. Now the paragraph, as this material says that at death everything stops, all perception stops, and that a person ceases to exist, totally ceases to exist. So I wondered about this, and I checked my notes from my religious training, and I found some things that puzzle me. And I was taught that there was something that exists after death, the spirit. And it may not be alive, but it seems to be active, or is able to perceive, and it is personal, and it exists. And I need some help to understand this. And I have four Bible verses from my notes that I can't fit into this. And I'm going to need your help to understand those four verses, if that's okay. The first one is Ecclesiastes 9, 2 through 10. Now what you're going to do is have the witness, of course they're going to take their Bible, and you can have yours too. But this is what you're going to say. I'd heard from my community that Ecclesiastes is a book that compares two different views. Solomon is recording those two views. One view is of a person who has a materialistic view. They don't believe in the spiritual. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in heaven. They only believe in what they can see and touch. Only those things that are under the sun. And then Solomon contrasts this by writing another viewpoint of someone who does believe in God, who believes in heaven, and spiritual things, everything that happens under heaven. So those are two views. And the view of the materialist is not Solomon's personal view, but he's contrasting of how two people look at the world. And my community says that chapter 9 here in Ecclesiastes are the views, or the view of someone who believes in, does not believe in God, but only believes in the materialistic view, those things that are under the sun. So if you could go through verses 2 through 10 and help me understand that, I would appreciate that, to see if the way I was taught is how you see it. Then you have them read verses, starting with verses 2, and when they read verse 2 and 3, say, excuse me, here's my first question on verses 2 and 3. This seems to say in the scriptures that there is only one eternal fate for both the wicked and the righteous, and they all end up in the same place for all eternity. Now my community would say that this is the view of someone who's a materialist, who only believes in the material world. And this is not Solomon's personal view at all. Of course, he believes in the resurrection. So how do you see this? Is this the materialistic view, or is this a view of someone who believes in God? And let them answer. Then they read verses 5 and 6. And you say, okay, and verse 6 is, excuse me, here's my other question to dealing with these two verses. This seems to say that the dead will never know anything ever again because death ends everything. Again, my community would say that this is the mistaken view of the materialist, who only believes in the things under the sun. And this is not Solomon's beliefs, because Solomon believes in the resurrection, that the righteous will be alive and see things and know things. How do you see it? And let them finish. Then after they're done explaining Ecclesiastes 9, you say, okay, well, I'll think about that. They'll probably, may even agree with you that this is really the view of a materialist and is not meant to be Solomon's full view. Then you say, well, as I mentioned, I had 3 other scriptures that I'm trying to fit into your book here under this subject, what really happens at death. And that other verse is Matthew 14, 26. Now, you want to read that in your Bible. Maybe a couple Bibles. Remember, I've recommended to the New Jerusalem Bible or the Holman Christian Standard Bible. And you're going to read Matthew 14:26, which is about Jesus walking on the water. And then this is what you're going to say. The disciples thought that they saw a ghost of a dead person walking on water. Now, didn't the disciples know that death ends everything and a person ceases to exist? Or did they think that there was such things as ghosts that could appear to walk on water? Well, what about the Jews of that day? These disciples seem to believe in the possibility of ghosts. Is that the common view of the Jews of Jesus' day? And if that's the case, why didn't Jesus correct them? And why is there nothing recorded in the Gospels about Jesus sitting down with them and the Jews of the day and explaining, oh no, death is the end of everything and you cease to exist at death? I'm curious, help me understand this verse and how it fits into your book. And let the witness answer. Don't argue it, just get the answer. Now if the witness says they have to go and research it and come back another day, well, let them do that. And when they come back, remind them that this is a verse that you're still trying to fit into their book. Okay? Then you go on to the next verse. And you say, I have another verse, Hebrews 12, verses 22 and 23. And you want to read it in your Bible. Because their Bible, the New World Translation, reads a little differently there at Hebrews 12:23. So you're going to read it in your Bible, maybe a couple different translations. Then you say this, in my Bible it says that there are spirits of righteous people there in heaven with the angels there in the first century. Who would they be? They'd been perfected in heaven. So who are these righteous persons that had been made perfect there in heaven? It didn't sound like they ceased to exist and that, you know, it just all stops and there's nothing left. It sounds like something continues after death. Can you help me out there? And let the witness explain. And again, don't argue with them. If they say they have to go home and research it and come back, that's fine. And when they come back, just remind them that that's a question you're trying to deal with. Then the last verse, Revelation 6, 9, and 10. You want to read it again in your translation, as well as they can read it in theirs. And then you say, you know, this seems to describe how in heaven there are souls of dead Christians. Of course, this is a future vision, but it describes that in heaven there will be these dead souls who ask God a question. Are they really dead? Or have they ceased to exist? Or how is it possible that the Bible would depict souls carrying on a conversation with God, asking questions, waiting, getting an answer, and responding to that answer? I'd like to understand that, if I could. And if the witness has to go and research it, that's fine. They come back, remind them that you have that question. Let them answer it. Don't argue with them. Just move on to the next subject.